I think it's high time for another episode of the most unusual clubs we have here at Golfbidder, and we have been pacing the aisles of the vast array of clubs we have in the warehouse just behind the camera and chosen three excellent candidates, I would say. Now, before we start, just a little ask to press like and subscribe to the Golfbidder YouTube channel at the end if you enjoy this video. It helps us greatly to bring you fresh content. So let's get cracking, and first up is this little bit, well, it's called a mini driver, not the actress, an actual mini driver. Now, the average golf bag will have a driver, a fairway wood or two, maybe a hybrid or utility, but there's one option maybe you haven't heard about until lately, and that's a mini driver. Now, I say until lately because none other than Phil Mickelson used a mini driver to great effect at the US Open, where he kind of went from not being able to hit the planet Earth off the tee to suddenly finding the Kiawah Island fairways with pretty much near perfection. And it was actually Mickelson himself, would you believe, who came up with the idea of having a smaller version of a driver back in 2013 with Callaway. He was always wild off the tee, but he was still wild back then, and he wanted something to produce a tighter dispersion, but kind of still had the characteristics of a driver, like a strong loft, a deep face, not much sole camber, kind of all the things that make a driver, and produce that extra ball speed and forgiveness. But also, because the head would be smaller than a driver and the shaft maybe an inch or two shorter, they would be more controllable and more workable. And so the mini driver was born, and then used by Phil to win the 2013 Open with an X-Hot 3 Deep model. This Mini 1.5 came after in 2015, and now, though he's still very much a Callaway player, his 12-club contract allows him to use the tailor-made original Mini mini driver to win the 2021 US Open. So if you're like Phil and you have an uncontrollable desire to bludgeon a driver off the tee but struggle with finding the property that the golf course actually own, then a mini driver could be a handy option for you. Next up, the famous Bullseye putter. Now, you go to any crazy golf place in the world and they'll most likely hand you out something shaped a bit like this and a rubber ball for your round. Now, you don't see them much nowadays, but the Bullseye design had a serious record on the PGA Tour back in the day. Corey Pavin, for instance, he was regarded as a super putter, and he won loads with the Bullseye. Johnny Miller, remember him? He used one to win the US Open. And then there was another guy, Mark McNulty, on the European Tour, a Zimbabwean player, kind of took the Irish nationality towards the end of his career. He was a super putter, and he had one. Now, this one I have here actually is by Scotty Cameron, and you'll see here on it also is the name John Reuter Jr. And it was actually Reuter who invented this design in the 1940s. Now, the original was flat both sides, so you could put right or left-handed, but this one here is a later model with a flange along the back for a bit more stability. But later then, Reuter sold his company to Acushnet, aka Titleist, in the 1960s, and they went from making just golf balls to making clubs also, including the Bullseye, which was popular all the way up until the 1980s. And the design of the Bullseye is lovely and simple. It has that brushed brass texture, a soft metal that gives loads of feel. The shaft, well, it's not totally centered, but it's getting there for great weight and balance on off-center hitch. I actually played with Rich Beam at Royal Portrush, and that day he had his Bullseye, and he canned absolutely everything. I'll never forget it. That is the Bullseye putter. There's more to it than crazy golf. And finally, who remembers the tailor-made XFT wedge? XFT standing for exchangeable face technology from 2010. The concept being that of all the clubs in your golf bag, the ones you need the faces to be the best on are your wedges, because they're the one that produce all the spin, all the control, all the zip and whatnot around the green. But they're also the clubs that wear out the grooves the quickest. So you can't really fall in love with your wedges because you'll just need to replace them every so often. So TaylorMade had this bright idea of producing a wedge with a face that was removable, and then when the face wore down, you could just pop in a fresh face and off you go, just kind of like changing the blade on a razor. They actually even had conforming groove faces for tour players and non-conforming groove faces for social golfers, because it was around that time that the groove change actually came in. Some of the younger players mightn't even remember the groove change, but U-shaped grooves were banned. But look cheaper, more environmentally friendly to ship, less waste on the course. You don't have to throw out your shaft and grip. The XFT wedges were perfect, every bit as good, if not better, than a normal wedge, but just like lots of great ideas, it just never caught on. I wonder if this concept was just a little bit before its time, and now that we're all a lot more conscious of our carbon footprint and the environment, could this see a refresh in the future? Watch this space. So guys, there you go, another installment of Golfbidder's most unusual clubs, and we actually have plenty more inside for another episode in the not too distant future. Now, please do press like and subscribe on the YouTube Golfbidder channel. Follow Golfbidder across Facebook, Twitter and Instagram to keep up to date with the very latest. From me for now though, it's Donal, out.